I'm tired of being witness to endless suffering. Genocide unfolds, and I want to rip my skin open. Endless horrors warp our world. How much more rubble and blood? How many more dismembered corpses? How much more screaming and pain? How much more death can continue to occur? If I punch at the machine, will it make a dent before I crack my hand open on the titanium steel and my blood slides off, leaving no stains? I think people like really do need to just like really like scream and like scream to the point where they're like frothing at the mouth, screaming like you're about to like throw up your like all your intestines, screaming. Honestly, like
Okay, cool. This is a Mutant Manifesto, episode 23. After a month of going through Akira with a fine-toothed comb, Josh and I are joined by an extension of the cyberpunk cyborg in today's depraved and constantly changing streets. Dagger Wound is a performance artist, musician, activist who I've known for a while and has gone through like so many different permutations in the time that I've known it, and super excited to like have it on the podcast to talk about its different experiences and evolutions, and see if we can frack any useful, resources for our own project here. Dagger Wound, how's it going? Welcome on the podcast.
hey, thank you for having me.
How's your day going so far? How's your Sunday been?
Sunday's been really cute, actually. I'm in San Diego right now. I just played a show yesterday at this like little I don't know what it was. I think it was called Comet Theater. It was like in this like garage. You like go in and then there's like a little room. And it was really sweet. I had some friends come through that I've like known for like years. Um so it just felt really nice, and like um my friend who put the show together did like such an amazing job. All the artists were really tight, so I'm definitely just like feeling really happy about all that, and like it really got me out of like a funk I was in. So I was like, I'm so back. Like,
San Diego's a
unstoppable
beautiful.
Again.
What'd you say?
Unstoppable right now.
Let's go. Okay, San Diego's beautiful. It's like it definitely has like healing vibes. The light is very beautiful, and that like that like coastal area. Do you want to maybe, as like kind of a way to introduce yourself as a current manifestation to the listeners, would you want to describe like what your performance was last night?
Sure, yeah. So last night, so I started the performance where I had this like kind of like bodysuit with this like mask that I covered my face with. And I chose for like my Dagger Wound sets, I like start the beginning with either like a text or a quote a lot of the time. That is like how it kind of like it's like I use like an AI generator, which is like uh something I've been doing in like since Mirrored Fatality too, is like using like AI For Mirrored Fatality, we would use the AI for like to put like different phases, which would be like different songs. So it kind of felt like you were in like a video game where you would be like phase this, phase that.
Mm-hmm.
But for this one, I put like yeah, like different like quotes or speeches and stuff, and I put one by Leila Khaled, and it was just about like essentially just about the importance of like dissent. Um and so I started it like in this mask on the floor, and I was like covered in all this tape, and I like ripped all the tape off and then like ripped the mask off. Uh and then I was doing vocals. Um and then after I did vocals, I did this like new part of the set I've been like experimenting with. Also for Dagger Wound, I do a completely different set every time just because I like want to challenge myself.
Mm.
So every performance is like completely different. Like um so I had done like a human instrument performance before in Oakland, but I had skin stapled my thighs and then put string through, like kind of like stitch string through the staples, and then put like a contact mic and then like played it like an instrument. But
Whoa,
then for this
sick.
one, I wanted to make it look more like a harp. So I like put my arm like this with like my leg, and then I stapled like my arm and my leg, so that I had like the string going through from my arm to my leg. So it was like it kind of looked like a harp. Um, and then I played that for a little bit. Um, and then I took it out and uh I ended that set with like I like went kind of ambient at the end actually. Like I like played some harmonica and
Mm-hmm.
then like had this like vocal loop which was like these like lyrics I had just written that day, which was like I've laughed at fate so many times, I'll always be a menace. So that was like the end of that set, and then I just like yeah, and then I closed the set, and like the sound is mostly like kind of harsh noise electronic, but I also have like a lot of different types of like sound elements. Like it gets like kind of softer. Sometimes I'll put in like little like drum parts, or I'll have like drone parts. Like it's not necessarily just all like
Mm-hmm.
like the whole time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I feel like you need the I feel like you need the contrasts to like bring out the I think the contrasts bring out kind of like I don't know terror or like intensity or whatever you know a lot
Yeah.
like if it's all just like straight um obliterative cacophonous noise then it doesn't necessarily hit as
Totally.
hard, you know. um
Yeah. No, that's super real. I also think like sometimes like people aren't like don't love just like a harsh wall of like loud abrasive sound. Like
mhm.
I do, but I don't want people to like I don't want I don't want it to like not be accessible. I
Totally.
try to make it accessible as much as
Mhm.
possible. Like I put in trigger warnings. Like I try to not play my shit like so loud that people are like, like they can't appreciate it. Um, I also just like having different textures. I think
Mhm.
that it it keeps things more interesting to have it like change.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. So maybe we can kind of trace out some like previous versions of performance you've done or different like things that you've been involved with. The one kind of I feel like I saw you like way back in the day in LA in like 2018 ish era. I barely even remember what that set was really, but it
I'm
makes
so
me. It
glad.
was like vertexx, I think. Do you remember vertexx or? You
Yes.
remember that place? It was kind of a
I
cursed
remember
space,
Vertex
but
and Rec
rec center.
Center.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. That was the other one. There were these two like warehouse scenes that me and my like fuckhead crust punk roommates would go to. And yeah, there was like a bunch of cool stuff that was happening as far as like people who were playing there, but also a bunch of weird, not so great shit. But R.I.P. to both of those places.
Honestly, definitely RIP because I feel like I haven't felt that same idea of like, oh, I know I can go to this spot every week
Mm-hmm.
and I'll either see some noise shit or some like experimental shit. Like, I guess there's like coaxial, but it's like not.
Mm-hmm.
It's coaxial is like a bit more like of an established spot
Mm-hmm.
that's like organized. It's like
Yeah, it doesn't feel
those
as
spots where
anarchic at
like,
all. Like it doesn't feel as like
yeah,
it's a
and
little
I
more
love
like
coaxial. Like
pristine or
that's
something. Cool, but okay, coaxial's
totally.
cool.
It's yeah.
Wait, okay, so like, can we do like a time jump then? Like, we just did the most recent set. Like, do you remember one of the first? Because one of the first sets you played.
Yeah, honestly, I'm like
I'm sure it's
so
very.
embarrassed
I'm
by my earlier
sure. I mean,
trust.
yeah.
It's like so cringy to me. I'm just like,
I mean, say as much or as
but
little as
I
you
don't
want,
know.
but
Maybe it's
like, it's kind of. I mean, that's. I feel like this evolution is like really important. It always starts with cringe. Like, you got to start with cringe to become a creator.
okay. You know what? That makes me feel better that it
I
it
mean,
always starts with cringe because
I
I'm
mean,
like, am I
yeah.
the only one that was like cringy?
I feel like I mean like I had the
I feel
Jackie
like
Sinful era, which is like definitely was cringe. I definitely like leaned into the cringe with that one.
yeah, but your costumes were like cool and like still interesting
Thanks.
and exciting. I don't
Thank
know if I
you.
ever got to see you play, but I remember seeing your like
I only played like a
the
couple shows.
yeah,
One of them was at Rec
real
Center,
okay.
and one of them was at Coaxial.
Yeah. Hell yeah. I mean, that's the spots to play.
They were so bad.
First rec center, then the Hollywood Bowl.
Yeah,
Jackie Sinful.
yeah, yeah. Right. Um. Okay, so you had a very cringe origins as a creator. How old do you think you were when you started like doing
Yeah.
performance?
I was like 20, but the thing is like I hadn't really gone to art school and also I was like so much more like socially anxious at the time and like I did really want to perform and I more wanted to do like punk music or like do like kind of like screaming stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Uh but yeah, so that like the first set, it was like the first set of me and Lau's project Mirrored Fatality. I think we were like 20. And it
Mm-hmm.
was just like 15 minutes, guitar and bass with no rhythm, screaming, and then like poetry. And I was like so nervous at the time to do it too. Um and it was cute because like obviously like a lot of friends like came and were really supportive. But I'm definitely like looking back, I'm like that was so fucking cringe. It was
Yeah.
like we didn't know how to play our instruments, we didn't know anything about sound.
Mm-hmm.
We had like a 15-minute set and it sucked, but you gotta start somewhere, I guess.
Yeah, for real. Like I
And it was at
genuinely
Chewing Foil. It was at Chewing Foil.
Chewing Foil. I remember. Okay,
Uh,
for sure. That
yeah,
was an
I
that
had
was an
wanted.
event series and kind of space in LA, right?
Yeah, I had wanted to play Rec Center, but it kind of like shut down by the time I had like gotten everything together. So
Yeah. So maybe okay. So
yeah,
like honestly, the Rec Center and Vertex were like these underground spaces that were like very again like culturally rich. There's lots of like important cultural exchange going on there in like the underground music scene of LA. In like 2018 or something like that, and then like once the pandemic hit, afterwards we kind of saw it all get kind of flushed down the kind of toilet, like I feel like we've seen an influx of of
DJs.
of what?
Oh, wait, sorry. Were you gonna say DJs?
I mean, yeah. Well, we've seen a lot of people move in who are not really. I don't know. I feel like that whole scene, the whole anarchic sort of grungy scene, is like pretty much rinsed away quite a bit in LA. Do you have the sense of like a permutation since the pandemic in that sense?
Uh, yeah. I mean, so I left LA. Actually, funny story. Was you're honestly the reason I feel like you springboarded a lot of shit to happen for like how I left LA was me and we were like living in this like weird desert commune after getting evicted from our apartment, and it was just like getting really strange. It
Was
was
this during the
giving like
pandemic that he got
sex.
evicted?
Yeah, this is like beginning of the pandemic. It was giving like sex cult vibes.
The desert
Um
thing that you
it
went
was
to afterwards.
yeah.
Okay, sure.
Yeah, and
Yeah,
then
yeah, yeah.
Jackie connected us to, I don't think your family doesn't still work at that spot, that
No,
farm
they don't.
anymore
They do
in
not.
Wisconsin, right?
Nope.
Okay,
Yeah.
for sure, for sure. Yeah, so they had connected us to this farm in Wisconsin. So we basically moved to Wisconsin. We had only been in the desert for like a month, maybe, and then I had always been in California. So then
Hmm.
moved to Wisconsin, and that springboarded this whole like 4 year time where I was just like permanently living on the road and like on tour, and basically traveling like around like nationally and internationally, playing like underground spots like across the world. Like the last like European tour was like mostly different like warehouse squats in Europe, which was really fucking cool. Um, and like I've lived at like different kind of like communes, and also like just like action camps, like Stop Cop City. Yeah. So then, moral of the story: now I'm now moved back to LA, and it is interesting because like I still don't feel kind of like what I said, where it was like I know that I will go to like this specific DIY spot every week, and there will be some like crazy experimental shit happening. Like I don't necessarily feel that, but I do feel like there is like a good crew of like freaks now in LA. Like they're like more like freaky experimental artists. That has been really inspiring. I've been spending a lot of time at church, which has been really church is like one of the oldest DIY venues, like fully DIY, fully like, like artist run.
Is that is that a Church of
Uh,
Fun?
yeah,
For sure.
and it's been around since like 2012, and it has like a long history of like really cool things, but also like really bad things, and like,
Yep, just like
just
Vertex
like a
and
lot.
Rec Center, yeah.
Totally. And a lot of people have had, really bad experiences there, like in like past generations, just because it's a spot that's been around so long and so many people travel through there, so many like artists, and also just like, people coming to shows because they do shows every week. And that's been exciting because like I've been like kind of like hosting more stuff there, or like playing there, and like hosting more like freaky noise stuff. Like we have a show that me and another noise artist, Romeo, are putting on like late January, called like Noisers Are Us or Noisers Are Up. I can't remember. Like one or the other. And it's like we're gonna have like a couple like East Coast touring noise acts, me and another like really sick artist in LA, Franz Murder, are gonna do like a collab set called Glory Hole. Um and then Cleo is gonna play. So it's like it's been cool. I when I had finished this last tour that I had done with like Noisy Shore, the one that I had done with like three other artists, one of the shows I had booked at church, and it was like all just like different kind of like experimental queer trans artists. And it's just cool. Like it's cool to have that space available, and like be able to book there and be able to kind of like book what I want and also like reshape how people see it. Because also like a lot of the people who are like in that orbit now are really good people and like
Hmm.
really talented. Lots of, and it's actually like lots of trans people there now, which is like
Hmm.
really cool.
Yeah, I feel like spaces and scenes are like pretty much essential to a lot of this stuff. And it seems like you've existed in quite a few of those. Like you've found a way to like kind of integrate a nomadism, like a nomadic lifestyle, the past long while. You've integrated that with like a like kind of this. It seems like you have a continuous sense of community in all these different places that you either manifest as you get there or you just thread through different connections. Do you
Totally.
resonate with that?
Yeah, thanks for saying that. I mean, I think like for me, what is really important is like that like treat everyone like as a person and like like really take the time to like get to know people and just like move in a way that is like because I feel like there's like a lot of just like disposability and also like when being someone who like has moved so much, it's like not having like kind of that sense of like permanence in connections. So I feel like for me it's like it's really important that yeah, I put in a lot of care into people and like make sure people feel like respected and like appreciated. And I think also just like see so many different scenes and places, I feel like my brain can kind of just like understand dynamics like with this like UV ray lens now where I'm like,
Hmm.
oh, okay, like I see what's like I see what's happening here, like I kind of know how to like handle a problem like this because I've been in something like this before in this type of place in this type of way or like and I feel like also just like the amount of like generosity I feel like people have like showed me over the years, just like being a touring artist and like even just like the small things like someone like like taking the gear to the car or like giving a ride home or like giving like a couch to crash. It's like all of that stuff like means so much to me and I like never want to take it for granted and like I always want to just like be as like generous and like caring and also like authentic in how I like build relationships and just like treat relationships as like like a really important connection and not just like transactional because it's like that's literally our relationships are all we have and like we're living through a time where like like the world fucking sucks, so it's like it feels really important to me to like nurture uh, yeah, and it's really cool too because it's like I'll see someone I haven't seen. Last night I saw my friend Hunter who I hadn't seen in like 4 years, but it was like no time had passed and like
Hmm.
the love was still like so strong and I was like that is like
Hmm.
so beautiful and cool. Like
Yeah. You have been through all these different phases, and you've been so transient in these past years. But I do know that you and
yeah.
Laoud have been like together through this whole time. How did you find each other, and like what? How did you go from screamed in a basement without knowing anything about instruments to like touring the world and like playing, and like collaborating with like all these amazing artists?
um yeah, I mean honestly like
Because this is
we
just
just
sorry to
fucking
for the listeners, like Loud and Dagger had a has have a project going called Mirrored Fatality that has been the guise under which they've toured the world and in the past few years.
I think we started the project just for fun in LA. Like we were both living in LA. So right now we're taking a bit of a hiatus and kind of doing more like of our own like solo stuff, and also like um just have like different like life plans that we're kind of like
Mm-hmm.
pursuing right now. Just for like so we but for the past like four um 4 years, like or 5 years actually, when we started it, we had met in LA. Like we were both I was doing prison work in LA and I had met them, and they like prison abolition work, not like working for the prison. But I had met them, and they seemed
Well,
pretty down for that type of stuff.
yeah.
What's
I
up?
was also I wanted to get to at some point, like also, and maybe this is a good time to do it. Like, I also wanted to know, like, what exactly is the like to what extent is activism integrated into your musical and performance work? And was that part of the founding of like Mirrored Fatality? Is like sort of like political understanding or world understanding?
Oh, totally. Yes, definitely, 100%. And same with Dagger Wound. It's like I wouldn't make art if I didn't feel like it had like a bigger political purpose. Like I don't. I think that I would maybe make art for myself, like just to do it, but I wouldn't like I wouldn't want to have a platform and like share something if I didn't have like
Hmm.
something to say, and also like it had to have like a material like contribution. Like I feel like with Mirror Fatality, we started it from a very like political place. Like it was always political. Even though like over time, I feel like it got more like kind of like wound in a way that wasn't as like loud. Like at the beginning, it was like loud. Like we would just be like,
Hmm.
be like really like and feel like art wasn't something that I was like, oh, I need to like go into. It was like something that I feel like was kind of like a tool for me to like um yeah, like I feel like I would see it as like a like a way for me to like punch at the machine a little bit.
Hmm.
But
Hmm.
like um yeah, and like in terms of like how we did that, like literally we just worked our fucking asses off. Like we were like applying to shit all the time. We would just be like making shit all the time. Like we were
Hmm.
like going, going, going. Like we would just be like look at like we would like the amount of like work and time we put into Married Fatality was like immense, because like we and it was really beautiful because it's like I don't think either of us thought it would ever go as far as it did,
Hmm.
or like evolve into like what it did. But yeah, and it essentially like yeah, we just like would apply to a lot of like grants and residencies, and just like like we when we first started, we didn't even really have like a huge amount of gear, and we would just kind of like sometimes people would give us gear, or we'd like get a little like money, and we'd like buy a new piece of gear, and we'd like like write songs on the road, and then we'd get to a residency for a month or a few weeks and just like try to bang out like like recording and finishing a song and a music video, and then it would be like, okay, now we're like spending like 2 weeks like booking an entire tour ourselves, and, like so we would just be like like going, going, going.
Yeah.
Yeah, we like took no breaks.
Like, that's so exhausting, like, to do that, because you kept
Yeah,
it up for a very long time. I mean, you were like going around for so
totally.
much. Um,
Yeah,
I don't know. Do you have any other? I feel like it doesn't take. I don't know. A lot of people don't have it in them. You know what I mean? And
yeah,
I don't know. I wonder if there's like. Do you feel like there was some kind of? Do you think that like spirituality came into this as well in some way, or like something like that, or what motivate like what's the motivation? Like, what was the fire that like made you continue to like burn through this trail?
Yeah, I mean, spirituality for sure. Like we would do a lot of like rituals together, like also like vision boarding, like manifestation rituals and just like prayer. And I feel like for me it was like I really believed in like the impact that Mirrored Fatality has on people. Like I feel like I like really believed in like what we were doing. Like I think like like a lot of people would be like, this really like changed my life, or this like blew my mind, or like, like it's so important to have this like um yeah, like to see y'all doing this thing, and it like inspired so many people. And I feel like it was just feeling like, I feel like I was really fueled by like I felt like I was doing like the something really purposeful. And I do think like I do feel like Mirrored Fatality did make like a really big impact on a lot of people, and also like um like also like we've been able to do so much politically as well, like around like Kashmir and Mindanao and like Palestine, and just like mutual aid for our friends, and um like just and also like like collectives and different like orgs we work with. It's been like, yeah, I feel like it's really not for everyone. Like you have to kind of just be okay with living in a state of like chaos and instability, and also like being in kind of like high endurance environments like all the time, which is not for everyone. And also like a lot of people physically just can't do that. And it does take a toll. But yeah, I feel like I felt like so motivated to like keep doing it. But that is kind of why we took a hiatus, because we were like we need to like
Can't keep going
kind
forever.
of like take a break. Yeah, yeah.
Um,
Even though like I'm still like touring.
right. I mean, you're still going, yeah, but you're at least a little bit more like based in LA now, right?
Yeah.
You mentioned dissent in the last those in the context of the last performance you did, and I feel like we need dissenting voices, and people really crave that, and it's actually really rare to see, even in like experimental leftist spaces or whatever. It's really rare to see people who are dissenting in the way where they're actually like kind of they're kind of like examining the like depravity of the world and spitting it back in its face. I feel like that's I think it's really refreshing and liberating, and I think there's people, especially like queer people, people of color, like I think a lot of femmes resonate with your kind of unpacking and deconstructing of certain dynamics. I think that all of that is really liberating for people to see, and I think it's really like cathartic and healing for people to see. But it's interesting. I feel like as your performances have unfolded and continued to transform and like blossom or whatever, there's been a lot of it's been getting like it seems like there's more and more kind of toxicity that's kind of evoked and brought into the space and kind of dealt with in some way. A couple themes that I wanted to like point out here were like I see a lot of like gun-like devices that could also be like huge like syringes or something that are like that you will point at people or will be pointed at you, and then kind of like something will be injected or shot into somebody. I see a lot of like your fits are like have a lot of like mesh and fishnets and stuff, but they're also a lot of like military and like hardware and tech stuff, and it's very like sort of like post-apocalyptic repurposed militarism. There is a lot of like fetishistic like performance, like both as like kind of like a bimbified like sexiness, and then also as like sadomasochism, like straight up like kink stuff. But then there's also like a lot of like fixation on hardware and tinkering that is like a lot of experimental noise people are really into. But I see that kind of brought into the same kind of like kind of this almost ADHD like constant tinkering and kind of like jamming things and kind of almost bashing the hardware a little bit and kind of getting into that sort of more the pseudo sexual relation to the machinery as well. Um,
Totally.
so I guess I'm kind of. It seems like there's been a lot of, to put it, you know, differently. I feel like there's been like more and more of this sort of absorption of this like kind of cyberpunk dystopia into your performances and to the
Totally.
sorts of aesthetics that you're working with. Um, I don't know. Do you want to say anything about that? Like, has that been like something that
Yeah.
you've seen increase in your interests as an artist?
Yeah, totally. I mean, I'll talk about Mirrored Fatality, and then I'll talk about Dagger Wound too. But so with Mirrored Fatality, like we kind of like evolved it, creating this whole world essentially called Ecoside Earth, which is like imagining we're in 3033 after like multiple apocalypses, and where these like mutated trans species that have come out of like the destruction, which we called Labuad Meklux, which is like a word we made up um, out of like Urdu and Kapapangan. And basically, we're creating the world um, kind of as like a warning of like um, like this is what is going to happen if like we don't like change the direction we're going in, because obviously like like we're living in a world so ruled by technology that we are essentially like so much of us and like how we relate to each other and how we just are is like tied with technology. Um and I feel like so we've like created this world, and then we're going through the different phases of like what we're like imagining as like, oh, these are like different phases within this world that and then we're like performing each of these phases, and like one of the last phases is the one where we get volunteers from the audience and we turn them into the new species, which is when we like suction cup the audience and have them like drink the liquid that makes them become this like species. So that's like, and it is very like inspired by like cyberpunk and just like BioWare, um, like trans evolution, cyborgness, and then one of the sets that I did for Dagger Wound that is like probably one of like the performances I'm most proud of doing was with my friend Izzy, who's a piercer. She goes by Ghore Girl,
For sure, I was going to ask
and
about Ghore Girl. Yeah,
yeah, and so we did this like performance um where she's essentially this like technology entity, and like what I had like imagined for the performance is just like thinking about how we're watching this genocide through our phones, and
hmm
like we're watching all of these horrors like through technology, but we can't like see or feel them in like our real life. But it's like that kind of like dissonance of like watching like the most horrific things possible, like like children being beheaded and just like all of this like fucked up shit that we're just watching every day on our phones, and that kind of like powerlessness of like feeling just like what am I supposed to like, what do I do with this like feeling, was like what I kind of wanted to make the piece about. So um that piece like basically started with like me in a chair holding like my phone, and then I like kind of like fall to the floor and start like writhing and having this like exorcism, and then Izzy like grabs me by the tail and like binds my mouth shut, and like um I'm sitting in the chair, and then she pierces both my arms, and threads wires through my skin and then binds me down with the wires. And then at the end, like, has these like needles in my face that she pulls out, and then there's like blood just like running down my face, like into my eyes, like all over my face. And I read this poem that me and one of my other collaborators, Kwame, who's a really amazing noise artist in New York, we had done like a set together where we had written this poem about Palestine together, and then we like ripped it and like stapled it to each other, and then took out the little pieces and gave it to the audience. So it was a piece from that poem. I'm gonna try to find the
Yeah, I was gonna ask.
um. Let me see. Oh yeah, okay. So it's short, but I can just read it. It was like, I'm tired of being witness to endless suffering. Genocide unfolds, and I want to rip my skin open. Endless horrors warp our world. How much more rubble and blood? How many more dismembered corpses? How much more screaming and pain? How much more death, death, death can continue to occur? If I punch at the machine, will it make a dent before I crack my hand open on the titanium steel and my blood slides off, leaving no stains? So I like read that at the end, and I had like just like blood like going down my face. Um, and I think like, like with a lot of my work, like there is a lot of like pain elements, like within like BDSM, within like sadomasochism, just because like I think like pain has always been like a physical pain has always been a way for me to like process and also like kind of like transform that into like, like feelings of like pleasure or joy, like use being able to use pain in that way. And I feel like also just like I really wanted to do that piece, especially because and me and Izzy, we hadn't figured out what we wanted to do, but I was like, I do want it to kind of like say something. And this is like what I'm thinking about, that I think would like make sense, and be a way for me to kind of like be a vessel for other people to maybe feel that too. And people really did. Like people were like crying, like it was like this, like be like allowing that pain to kind of be like viscerally seen. Um, I think is really important, because it's like we get so desensitized, like just like, and I think like that's also why I really like relate to cyberpunk stuff, especially like a lot of the like Japanese
Mm-hmm.
90s like cyberpunk, like the stuff I sent you, like 964 Pinocchio, or like Rubber's Lover, Tetsuo Iron Man, because it's like I feel like it has a lot of those like themes within it of like,
Yeah,
like,
absolutely.
yeah, like the society, like living through these like crazy apocalyptic societal shit, and like becoming one with the machine, and then also like um like technology, and yeah, like so.
Um, so like I'm reading a book about like Zapatistas right now, and how they've been able to like successfully, like hold down autonomous zones across parts of Mexico, like Chiapas and stuff, for like like 20 years plus. But I mean, of course, it's getting more complicated since 2018. But they did it right. They like held down these autonomous spaces. Um, and one of the quotes from like the sort of the manifesto or whatever, that was basically like, I don't have it on hand, but it's like, you got to keep like, we're like sitting here punching a wall over and over again, and most people go by and they're like, "What the fuck are you doing? Like that's insane. Your fist is bleeding," and or they'll be like, "Oh my god, so like so inappropriate, so like so wrong, whatever." But then like there might be like possibly one other person who will come by and also be like, oh, I see that there was like a little chip of concrete that came off this wall, so I'm gonna come here next to you, and like start punching it as well, and if start biting and scratching it, et cetera, et cetera. um And I feel like that's like the ethos that you got to keep alive if you want to if you're about it, you know what I mean? But yeah, so I feel like the bleeding is like a part of that process for sure. And the visceral pain, because I think this actually comes down to some of the things that I wanted to discuss a little bit when it comes to issues of like horror, sadomasochism, and I guess like catharsis. There's this issue of things becoming so virtual all the time that everything becomes virtual to this person who's seeing it. It's like a more and more unequal distribution of what is real and what is virtual. You know, the reality is all offloaded somewhere else, and and as a result, a lot of people feel like, I think with it goes the soul or whatever. Like a lot of the soul of the people watching is also offloaded to another place. It's not felt, right? You don't actually, we're not able to process. It's partially a technological capture. So I think that one of the ways we could get into this is to talk about the like what I just watched a couple hours ago was this book. This movie. The Rubber's Lovers. It's like a
say it 10 times fast.
It's a crazy black and white like movie from the, what is it, the 2000 or is it earlier? It's from 96. Shozin Fukui.
Yeah.
And so like in it there is like a experimental subject who's like kind of like, the idea is that this person is like, I don't know, like fully enwrapped in like a latex like suit that like he can't move within, and it's like, you know, mask is put on him, and he's basically like continually bombarded with like the most pure ether possible, and just like way too much of it, to the point where he's vomiting all over the place, and like, you know, he's going through severe withdrawal symptoms. He like, you know, sees bugs everywhere, and he's like clawing at his skin and everything. And then there's like these scientists who are continually working on this project that was funded by the government through plutocratic means, but is now going to be defunded because they haven't seen many results. And the idea is that they're going to be developing a digital direct drive, some way for you to transmit your soul, the soul of a person, into a psychic energy that can be used for some means. And they figure out that like torture is one of the ways that you can actually get some results there. They don't see many results, but they see some results. And a lot of it follows like these like three different men, scientists, who are like super fascinated with this and like super obsessed with it, in the same way that like literally like a noise musician or something is just like obsessed with gear or whatever. They're just like trying to figure out like, okay, what are the, like, how can we do these different mechanisms? And it turns out that one of them is like, and a lot of them are really into the torture aspect too. Like they think that like torture, like one of them is actually more of it into it as like a principled approach of being like, okay, what scientifically is the way to do this? And he's like, well, it seems like torture has some sort of effect here, so like we should keep doing that. Whereas other ones are like, I just want to torture this guy, you know? But there's kind of the range of different kind of depraved takes on that. And then there's like a sexy assistant who like is just like having a good time, just bopping her head along to the whole thing. Anyway, the whole point is that like there's a lot of references to like this idea that like this shit is so disgusting and unseen, but also somewhat sponsored by the government in some way. And I think that as it goes on, there's a lot of like references to like contamination and like biological warfare, and this idea that like the more that you push, because like eventually they do awaken a psychic awakening in this person, but then of course the subject becomes vengeful, and then there's a whole circuit of like revenge that also leads to more and more insanity. There's a lot of hyperventilating in the movie, not just by the torture victim, but by the scientist also. And to me, it just kind of altogether is a pretty apt like representation and sort of acclamation with like the traumas of like of tortured research and like of like being beholden to torture, whether as the perpetrator or as the victim. You have a lot of example of this too. People who are like flying drones will oftentimes have like, you know, severe PTSD and stuff, even though they don't see somebody die. You know, just because they watched the person live their life for many months or whatever, and then like pressed a button, and like there is some kind of psychic residue to that like catches
Yeah.
on. And I feel like you see that through like hyperventilating and doing different kinds of um like depraved repeated behaviors, you know. And I think like ADHD is kind of a
Yeah.
manifestation of that, and other types of things like that. What I'm really trying to say is that even when it comes to things like that, there's kind of this sense of like the revenge of the tortured spirit, but it's also like really hard to actually like capture that spirit, because I feel like even the most depraved horror movies and stuff, I think there's always a risk of them just becoming like more candy. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And but I feel like a movie like that one kind of does affect something. Maybe because it just reveals how like it's like kind of there has to be some kind of like backlash, some kind of like return of the like of the victim of torture in some way. I don't know, but I guess I'm kind of mostly curious about like when is it metabolizing like trauma, and when is it kind of like reducing it to some kind of like spectacle or something. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah. Um, I mean, something that I really liked about that movie was I feel like it just like I feel like uh, or like you know, like just someone who's like struggled with different like forms of like mental illness or like substance problems or um like just like being in a position of like vulnerability where like people are like people in like a higher position of power are like kind of in full control. Like I feel like what I really liked about that movie was I think it like had something that like could speak to like a lot of people, like that kind of like suffering. And I also thought that it was really like really cool that they kind of like made noise like sonic torture,
Yeah, I mean
like that
that's a
they kind of
studied
used like
that's something I
noise
was gonna.
music like
Yeah, no, that's like a studied element of like torture that's been like a thing for a long time. Like people have these loops that they use actually in different torture settings to
yeah.
like break down someone's individuality. But yeah, it was in the movie. It was like fully like it really was noise interested. There were like scenes of like one of the three scientists is like a noise guy. Like his whole thing is like breaking down someone's subconscious through these like different loops. He has this thing where he thinks that like rubber on rubber is one of the worst sounds. That like if you amplify it enough, then you can like really drive people crazy, like blow their minds, as he says. But there's these, and then he's writing down these
Yeah.
notations, and he says like actually like it seems like torture is part of the what's kind of awakens this stuff a little bit. But then there's actually some moments in the movie where they're like going towards like this transcendent moment of like awakening the psychic spirit, and the noise machines continue to make the noise beyond the control of the creator of the noise. So
Totally.
they actually
Totally.
transcend the like physical limitations, and they do break into a psychic realm where the noise continues to exist, but it as a pure vibration untethered from its original manifestation. And that is the volta of the movie. That's where the revenge element starts coming in. So I think that it is very telling that, yeah, that's something I wanted to ask you about. Like, it is noise specifically that is kind of the thing that catalyzes the potential for revenge and for breaking out of this cycle. It's someone trying to push noise to a spiritual dark level, and then eventually getting what he wanted, and then the noise kind of playing its catharsis out on him as well as on the entire scenario in which it was born. Like, do you think that there's something unique about noise that has this capacity?
Definitely. I think that that's what I love about noise music so much, and like why I feel like I've been particularly drawn to it, and also like in Dagger Wound, like drawn to doing more like kind of like noise sets. Like, because I feel like Mirrored Fatality has noise that is very genre, but with Dagger Wound, it's a lot more like noise. I feel like because I think noise is such a transformative like way of creating, because it's like it really is like there I feel like there's some like plays and like I'll like feel, I'll feel that feeling of like this big, even larger or greater than like what I is taking like a form on its own. And I think noise has the capacity to do that because of how boundless it is, and how um attached to a like particular sense of like composition, or like and you know, like it needs to like look a certain way, or like sound a certain way, or be experienced a certain way, that I feel like a lot of other music genres have. um and I think that there is something like very transformative about that, about being able to like create something that like does not really have a form that can be like easily classified into like one box. um yeah, and I think like I think like in terms of like I know like in the end, obviously, like it was like they didn't like you. I think you were like talking about like metabolizing trauma in that
Mm-hmm.
movie,
Mm-hmm.
and I feel like they didn't really win, you know?
Yeah,
But it's
because
also like I think that's just realistic. Like,
it is realistic. Like, it's
because sorry, what were
also
you
the
gonna say?
contagion of it. Like, it continues to unfold. It starts out in this secret chamber, and then like it actually inevitably leaks out to the larger public, to the point where all these psychic elements, these like spirits of these people who were tortured, in addition to other people who are also traumatized, continue to cycle out of control, and there's no real reconciliation. Like, the person who's a victim remains a victim even in his ethereal phase, but at least he can wreak vengeance and continue to spread this like experience to some extent.
Yeah, I had a
Yeah.
question because I'm trying to like imagine its effect, and I was wondering if it's a singularity effect that draws people into the tortured like zone, or is it more like this explosive effect that's like people have to bear the pain, like is that vengeance like being projected onto people that are therefore being subjected to the thing that the tortured was subject to, or is it sort of so pulling things into it, like it's pulling everything into that tortured realm so that everybody experiences the pain as well? I mean, and maybe I need to see the movie, but I'm hearing both, and I wonder if it's a unifying thing or if it's a mass disruptive thing.
I mean, the scale of the movie is actually pretty small, but just at the end of it, it kind of hints at this idea that, I mean, the guy kind of is like the victim essentially escapes finally, but then is still like addicted to ether, and basically kind of like disappears and or maybe dies, but then is also able to continue to wreak havoc on the on someone who is funding the whole project to begin with. And so by that logic, it would mean that that person then becomes traumatized or fucked up in some way. Not that he isn't already, but then, you know, the vengeance continues to cycle. You know, there's also his fiance, who is the sole survivor of the like torture dungeon, who is, you know, also has these sort of psychic kind of abilities or cipher kind of things that will continue to. I mean, she's also been severely traumatized and will probably continue to be fucked up and, you know, traumatize others as well. So just kind of it kind of hints at this opening up at the end, but throughout the movie too, there's people who go down to like see what's happening and get sucked into the torture dungeon, because once somebody sees that it's happening, the people who are in charge have to keep them there. Otherwise, they would tell other people, and so they need to keep them there. And then also, if they're there, they may as well torture them as well.
I see. I'm gonna go because I was thinking about the sound specifically, and maybe just like noise as either and I think I've come to the conclusion that it's more of a singularity effect, but I'll tease that out a little bit. Thank you.
Okay, so I guess the question remains, like, I don't know, it seems kind of impossible to reduce the amount of toxicity that cycles and circuits between us in this world. What do you think about that? I don't know. What do you think can be done, or, you know, and also I'm kind of curious about this idea of, sometimes I think that like catharsis and like sitting with your like darkest urges, the most fucked up things that you can like get into, somehow is a key to like getting to a better place. But I can't exactly figure out the mechanics of why I think that. I don't know if you have any thoughts on that either.
I think it's about shadow work and like, you know, just being aware that like, because I feel like for me, like performing is like a way for me to kind of like really like be embodied and like kind of like show, I guess, like you know, like things that might be like kind of ugly or scary or like hard to watch. And I think it's like getting those things out and like moving them out, and also like just being aware that like we as humans are like capable of, you know, like doing like the most amazing things but also the worst things, and that's in all of us. And it really is about like how you choose to like live your life and like you know, like be in relation to those around you, because it's like I don't really think that like I'm gonna be able to change the world on like a systemic or societal level. Like no one is gonna make me president. Like although like even if I was, like I wouldn't even know what to do.
Well, I mean, ultimately,
So
to be
like
completely honest, if you were president as it exists right now, it probably wouldn't be that different. You know, like, I mean, I'm sure there would be things that would be great. I mean, it would be great to try. Don't get me wrong, but like, but yeah, it seems like there's kind of this whole, yeah, I don't know. I could see you running for mayor or something. Like, I could see you doing some local political stuff at some point if you wanted to. Like, you definitely have that ability to. I mean, listen, it's kind of besides the point, but
that's crazy.
I mean, I could see you mobilizing a lot of people. You know what I mean?
That's sweet. Thank you. Um,
But yeah, that's kind of besides the
yeah.
point. I mean,
I guess what I'm like trying to say with that is like it really is just about like, for me at least, it's like what am I doing on like the small scale, like with like what I have access to and like the tools that like I know how to use. And also what am I willing to risk? Like what am I willing to lose? And what am I willing to sacrifice, and being really honest with myself about that. Um I feel like that's because I'm like, you know what? If it came down to it, like I'm ready to throw down. Like I know that. And I
mhm.
think it's like just being honest with myself about like what am I willing to risk to try. Um and I think
Mhm.
yeah, I think like honestly like some of the like best people I know are people that are like so aware of like their own capacity for good and evil. And I think that because I think people who are really like, oh no, like I'm a good person, you know, I'm like, okay, like I think that like as humans we really have to like sit with like the kind of like mess we've made and like the kind of like horrific things that are like capable of happening and be like, well, how can I choose to be different and like not bet like I'm not better, like, but how can I like choose to make different actions and try to like, you know, like yeah, just like try with like what I have and like yeah. And that's kind of like where I'm at with it. Um yeah, and I think it gets hard. Like it's hard when like it's like I'm just sometimes like it's like I'm trying to make sure my friend's like not, you know, gonna like kill herself. And that's like that's my thing for the day.
I mean, that's
Or
yeah.
yeah, like and it's like sometimes that's like what needed to happen and that's and like it's like not like I'm not like holding on to these like ideas of like oh um like I would love to see liberation in my lifetime, you know, but I'm like I don't know. I really don't know. Like I don't know like like I just feel like watching like watching how things have unfolded with the genocide and just knowing that it's like still going on and just like how everything is so normal, like business as usual.
Right.
Yeah, I'm like I just feel like if we can like watch obviously, you know, like people are mobilizing, people are doing really important things. Like I don't want to discredit that. Like I like the actions I've seen, like all of the work still happening, like that's all so important. Um but it is like yeah, I feel like it is really difficult to be like wow, like why is there still business as usual? Like I just like cannot understand that, but it has made me realize like I gotta just like do what I can with what I have and like continue to be a threat to the state in the ways that I will continue to be a threat to the state and like um just try to keep figuring out new ways to do it.
Is there a part of that like self-honesty that you think encourages or spreads the sort of maybe virus of being the threat to the state to other people?
Um
And
I
virus using affectionately, right? Like
I think so. Like I think like being like really unapologetic in like how I live my life and like just like being very like a very authentic freak. And also like I feel like I'm also inspired by like the people in my life who do that too cuz it's like yeah, it's just like reminders that like even though like we've got so many odds stacked against us, like we're still choosing to like live life in like this way that is like so against like what society wants on like every front and I'm like that's you know that's pretty cool.
I feel like
That is
one
very cool to see.
I feel like one of the like functions of like transgressive art or one of the potential functions of it is that it like kind of opens up the like a rupture in reality for people. So a lot of people will have their minds blown by what they see, and then they'll be kind of disturbed by it enough to reconfigure their relationship to consensus reality. And I think that like
Totally.
in those openings are moments where we can examine like what kind of world might be possible on the other side of that kind of rupture. And maybe in a similar vein, it also helps open up what kind of sacrifices we might be willing and able to make in different in a different like openings that might come up in the broader world outside of the context of the performance.
Definitely.
So like maybe the the like I think that like the performance space is one of the like really important like pseudo religious like spiritual spaces that we have, that people are able to like kind of have social experiences that are like transcendent in some way. And I feel like it's really important to have them be intended for outcomes that we want, which I think for me really essentially involves like reckoning with the stuff that is not good, because I think it's so we live in a lot of like mires of like aphasia. Like we can't remember anything, we can't experience anything, and we can't see beyond our numbness. So I think it's really important to like find ways to sensitize ourselves, and then to also like build those ruptures with the consensus reality that's so thick in America.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. I think there's a part of me that's like, do you need to be, or does the audience need to first also be somewhat pain or aversion curious in order for that to like bleed through? But I think the answer is no, because of the performance aspect that you mentioned.
Yeah.
But there are a lot of people who are pain curious, I think. I think a lot of people crave... I mean, we see a lot of sadomasochism in performance spaces. I mean, for example, and also like in video games, right? And like movies and everything.
Of course.
It's so common for like pain to be like the point of what you're doing, but also the point of what... Okay, let me try again. I feel like American culture has, or like generally, has so much to do with torture, pain, and violence, but in all the different contexts where you see it, it's all gamified and it's all kind of made into not real. It's all like made unreal, and I feel like that's kind of the I don't know. It's I think that's one of the challenges, is to capture the urge for this like sadomasochistic fun, and then to awaken the real pain underneath it, but then also not just in a way where you're like fucking someone's fucking someone up, you know what I mean? Because you're not just trying to like traumatize people randomly necessarily, you know. I don't know. That's kind of a difficult line to walk, I feel like, you know? Do you ever feel that? I don't know. Do you ever feel that? Because it seems like your work, like Dagger, is kind of like trying to sensitize people, and you do actually have these you have these volunteers in the audience, some of which will sometimes seem like they will be like, they'll be smiling the whole time as if like, oh, isn't this funny? And like you'll also see people at the performance spaces kind of have this like who maybe don't know who you are or what you're about, who are like smiling and being like, this is silly or whatever. But then like you also have people who sometimes through the performance itself, like you get these volunteers and you do like get their consent and stuff, of course, but I think there must be moments where you do kind of puncture something for them, and you do, you know, psychically, right, emotionally, and you do kind of help them kind of process things that they wouldn't have normally gone through. And it's more of a, it seems like it probably usually functions as more of a part of the healing process, but it's also a sensitizing part of it, and it's kind of that can be, it shakes people up. I mean, maybe. Do you ever think about, like, I don't know, has that ever been the difficult kind of elements of like intimacy to these types of performances for you?
Yeah, I mean, with with any form of like, just like where like other people are involved. Also just in general, like with practicing BDSM in any way, like communication and consent is so important. And I also feel like with my work, communication and consent is really important. Like in both projects, it's like at the beginning there will be like full trigger warnings for like um what it's gonna be in the set, like what topics are gonna be covered, like there's gonna be like blood or like loud noise. And with like the volunteers, um like when we ask people to volunteer, we give like the full run through of like what will happen. Like we're like, you're gonna experience like pain, you need to put your hands and you're gonna be on your hands and knees. Um like you can't be allergic to juice. And then like give people the option if they want to like experience that or not. And then after we give everyone like a little form that's like an aftercare form of like what to do after like getting cupped, which is like drink water, like take a second for yourself, like. And I think like yeah, I think that it's really important while doing things that are like really intense and do have like an emotional impact on people, to give people that like ability to consent to like whether they're like ready to experience that or not. Because, and I think in doing so, like, then when people do like commit to like see the performance or like commit to like volunteering, it's like um they're able to like, like get what they need to out of it because they had their like full autonomy to make that decision. um and I feel like it has, like been really moving or like changed things for a lot of people. The volunteer part I feel like has like different kind of like impacts, but also like um at the end of the day that is like a form of um like homeopathic treatment,
That's
is
what I
like
was
getting
thinking. Yeah.
cups. So it is like, yeah, it is like, like it is like this whole kind of like freaky, slightly sexy moment. But then it actually also is like something that like is actually like good for people. So it's like kind of like it's like interesting. Um
It is interesting. I feel like
yeah.
the like I feel like a lot of the devices that you use to cut people kind of look like guns or syringes, like I said, but it is kind of interesting that it's like cupping, which is kind of the reverse of like a gun or a syringe. It's like sucking up as opposed to a punching in. Do you want
Yeah.
to say anything like about cupping specifically? Is that something that's important to you as like a healing practice? I don't really know anything about it, to be honest.
Cupping is really cool actually. Like it is a way for your body to like release toxins, and also it's like really good for people who um have like experienced like bodily trauma, because it's like it gets rid of like soul shock, um which is like something that happens to people who have experienced like a lot of traumatic events where like essentially their like mind kind of like they just like heavy disassociation. Like it's really good for like getting back into your body. I haven't learned how to do bloodletting cupping. That's actually something I really want to learn. But bloodletting cupping is really cool because you actually like make an incision under the cup, and then um like it gets rid of like kind of like blood too. So like the cups end up being filled with like maybe like this much blood. Um which is also actually really good for your body to like release. And cupping is cool because it has roots in like Southeast Asia and like South Asia. And the reason I got into it was I watched this like movie. I forgot what it was called, but it had Riz Ahmed in it, and he's like getting cupping done, and then he starts having these flashbacks to Partition, which was like the giant like mass war that happened in South Asia. And it was like through getting the cupping down, he like unlocked these like ancestral memories of like war that like his family had experienced, and I thought that was like really interesting, and that was like part of what made me want to get into it. But culturally, like it is like my like parents specifically didn't practice it, but it is like something that is like culturally practiced. Um, and then we just kind of decided to like make it a part of our set and like put our own spin on it.
Yeah, I think it's really cool to have like action, like healing care actions, wrapped up in the aesthetics of like horror and militarism. I mean, because ultimately these things do go hand in hand. I mean, like love and war and resistance and
Totally.
like horror are truly intimately linked, I feel. And I think it's you can be, I don't know, like these things can coexist, you know. You don't have to be a monster and be a fascist. You know what I mean? You can be a monster and
Yeah.
be any
Be
number of
cool.
things. But it's, I think that the type of aesthetics and like rabble rousing I'm interested in with the Mutant Manifesto is like creating healing monsters, right? Monsters that are seeking, and again, healing is not just all like rose water and like lavender poultices, you know. It sometimes is like
Yeah.
crushing something too. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I think like people have this idea that like healing has to be really like soft and like beautiful. And I'm like, the time
You broke up again.
really ripping myself out of my skin, like shrieking into the fucking ground is like it's not it like it doesn't have to be just that. Like um yeah.
I'm I feel like I love that, and it's difficult to encourage people to seek it. So how is there, do you have any tips for like getting people to try and tap into some of that type of healing?
I mean I feel like definitely having like some kind of like creative practice. Also just like I think people like really do need to just like really like scream and like scream to the point where they're like frothing at the mouth, screaming like you're
Yeah.
about to like throw up your like all your intestines screaming. Honestly, like I think I like like sometimes like after a set I'll just feel so clear. And I also think like yeah, I think like it looks different for everyone. Like some people like that literally might not be at all like what they want or need, but I think like yeah, it's just like also like I feel like not not policing yourself, like really like sitting with like all of like your desires and like your shadows and like um you know not being afraid, not being afraid of like things that like uh might not be seen as like normal, and just like, yeah, I feel like, I mean, also like like just meeting other like
Mm.
freaks and like spending
Mhm.
time with other like freaks, seeing seeing art, seeing really like life shattering art. Um, yeah, hard to know.
Yeah. Because
What
I
they
feel
kind of
like
tried
the
it.
next question is like, how do you find a freak? Like, how do you, you know, and
Mm.
Yeah,
but
I'm dead.
and like, you know, what are the first steps to like killing the cop in your head? Because I feel like that's super important. And but I don't know. Thank you. It's, you know, nice to find people who have found it, um, or at least are finding it, right? So yeah.
Yeah. Thanks.
No.
I think that we might be kind of on our way to a resolution here. Seems like a kind of good note to end things on.
Hell yeah.
How do y'all feel? Anything
So
we're
much
missing?
better.
No, yeah.
Yay.
Okay, so like I feel like we
Yes.
are like I said, like the about the monster thing, I feel like, you know, you really are putting your whole fucking pussy into this whole like this attempt, and it's really cool, and it's
Thank
you know,
you.
inspiring, and um it's cool to see somebody from like 2018 vertexx era of my like crust punk days who is like now like transformed so radically and kept that spirit going in a radically different way, and probably like a, you know, improved way, and that you're like now inhabiting these spaces like torture fun and stuff, with a cohort that it seems generative of the types of mutants we want to see coming out of this fucked up gash of time. So yeah, like I'm just glad that we have some good spawn points set up over there, and kudos for being the like, you know, lording over the hell gate.
Well, thank y'all both for taking this much time. I like super appreciate it, and like the thoughtfulness. Um, yeah, and I'm so glad we've known each other so long, Jackie. It's so cool.
Yeah,
And we'll continue to.
I know it's cool because yeah, we haven't hung out that much time overall, but like it's been little here and there throughout a long period of time. It's been really, I don't know. I felt, you know, definitely like you were saying, like I feel that respect from you, and I definitely reciprocate it. You know, so it's just as cool to like be able to tap into it whenever we get the chance to.
Yeah, I feel that. I'm glad you feel it. Yeah, and I hope, our paths cross again soon. Or like maybe it'll be like 2 years again.
Mm-hmm.
Who knows?
Yeah, I have a feeling, you know, yeah, sometime ish.
Yeah. Cute. Um, I guess in terms of causes, uh, Arwa Collective is the collective I'm like working with a lot right now. We're planning on putting on another event soon. We just wrapped one up, which is like a fundraiser for Kashmir and Palestine. And we organized, like it was like DIY organized. There was like six of us, and we raised 3,000, which is like fucking sick
Fuck
in
yeah,
one night.
that's sweet.
At a DIY event in Oakland. So that was like amazing. Like I'm really proud of us, and all of the like performers and the vendors and um volunteers. Like, so definitely Arwa. If I punch at the machine, will it make a dent? Before I crack my hand open on the titanium steel, and my blood slides off, leaving no stains. Sometimes it feels like something went wrong and that's why we're here. That we're in some kind of cosmic cage or simulated psyop. We become in the face of simulations and psyops, and from wrongness spring. Syncretism is for the honorable and dishonorable alike. In thought and in body, no one, not two, in sky and seed soon, we dream of shadows to love through and hold their calloused hands. Shaping change in the nether pool from breath to breath and coming up again and again, seeking vistas of freedom. We embody a haunted perspective and witness the chaos from above. The mutant spirit still lives among us. Learn from the labyrinths and breathing mountains. How do you look and where are you looking? Note when you're stuck. Put sugar on your tradition pills and record before breaking. How's that feel to rot with glee, to decay with me? Like the process of radioactive decay in unstable atoms, degeneration yields a more sustainable nature.
How do the Laman Haywan remember wholeness from dismembered flesh? Corroded! Betrayed! How do the Laman Haywan remember wholeness from dismembered flesh? Rabid! In danger! As abominations, we must reckon with our unbecoming! Retribution has arrived!
Signals, circles around cracked skin.
Disintegrating and evolving! The blood McLeod!
The disintegrating and evolving La Boîte McLeod.